We continue now at the top of Daf Daled Amud Aleph and Meseches Makkos. This is Makkos Daf 4a. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas amoraim between Rav and Reb Chia with regards to a situation where you have 3 lugin of mayim she'uvim that falls into a mikveh, but in that 3 lugin of mayim she'uvim, there also falls into that a drop of wine so that it looks like wine. And Rav says that in such a situation, since it's essentially diluted wine, therefore we say that it does not disqualify the mikveh, it doesn't passel the mikveh, whereas Reb Chia taught that it does disqualify the mikveh. And the Gemara now is in the middle of saying that it's actually a machlokas tanoim. Rav is actually following Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri in this Mishnah in Mikvos. The Mishnah is talking about a situation again of 3 lugin of mayim she'uvin, but in this Mishnah, as the Gemara now continues, chaser kortov, the Mishnah continues and says that it's not exactly 3 lugin of mayim she'uvin, but it's chaser kortov, it's missing a kortov, which is a small amount, and then shenafa l'sochan kortov yain, then a small amount of wine falls in, a kortov of wine falls in, umarei and kamare yain, and it looks like wine, v'naflu l'mikvah, and it falls into the mikvah, lo paslu, it does not disqualify the mikvah. And the Mishnah continues, v'chein gimel lugin mayim chaser kortov. Similarly, if you have 3 lug of water, and again it's missing a kortov, shenafa l'sochan kortov chalav, and a small amount of milk falls in to complete the 3 lugin, umarei and kamari mayim, and in this case the milk doesn't change the color, it still looks like water, v'naflu l'mikvah, and it falls into the mikvah, lo paslu. The Tanakam in this Mishnah says also that does not disqualify the mikvah. Both situations are not considered a disqualification of the mikvah. And the Mishnah continues, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Omer, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Hakol holech achar hamara, everything follows the way that it looks. And Rashi explains, Chaser kortov garsinan hacha bereisha uvaseif, in the beginning and the end of the Mishnah, meaning the case with the wine and the case with the milk, both of them are chaser kortov. The original water is not a full 3 lug, but it's missing a little bit. So lo paslu, again the Tanakama says that it does not disqualify in the case of the wine falling in, mishum de chaser kortov, because it's missing a little bit. Avol ihavim ekara shloshes lugin shleimim, but Rashi explains, if originally it actually was 3 full lug, v'nachal l'sochan kortov yayin, and a little bit of wine falls in, umarei and and it looks like wine, paslu, then the implication of the Mishnah is the Tanakama would say it's disqualified. And when Rabbi Chia says in this exact case that we take down the mikvah, we say that it's not kosher, ki hai tanas really, that holds like the Tanakama. The Tanakama essentially is saying, since it is chaser kortov, that's why we say it doesn't disqualify the mikvah. The implication is that if it was not chaser kortov, if you had a full 3 lug of water, no matter what fell in after, whether it was wine, whether it was milk, it would disqualify the mikvah, and that's in line with Rabbi Chia. And then the Tanakama said, lo paslu, again, in the case of the milk, it doesn't disqualify. Time of the seifa nami, the reason of the seifa is the same. Mishum de chaser kortov havi, because it was not a full 3 lug of water, it was missing a kortov. V'gabe yayin nami havim motzi lemisni ki hagavna bereisha. By wine also, you could have had it like that. V'nisninu b'chad above, it could have really all been taught in one statement, because it's all the same reason. You didn't have to divide it into 2 separate halachas. Hachi, it could have been learned as follows, like this. Shalosh lugin mayim, chaser kortov. If you have 3 lug of water that are missing a kortov, shanafa l'sochan kortov yain o chalav, and it fell into there a kortov of wine or milk, bein shemarei and kamari mayim, bein shemarei and kamari yain, whether it looks like water or wine, lo paslu, would not be disqualified. Rashi is pointing out the Mishnah could have been more concise. Ela kiorcha de milsa katani lahu, but it was just learned in the normal fashion. Shahayayin shu edam hofech es hamayim imarein, because wine, which is red, it does change the color. Aval hachalav ein darko lafoch es marisim, but that's not true generally by milk, but really makes no difference. The point over here is that you didn't have 3 lug. And then we have the opinion in the Mishnah of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Hakol holech achar hamara, everything follows the way it looks. V'gabe yayin afilu have meikara shloshas lugin shleimim. So then, according to that, let's say by wine, even if you originally had a full 3 lug, but kaven demarei and kamari yayin, but since it looks like wine, lo paslu, that does not disqualify. V'rav kivase savarle, and Rav would hold, according to this, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. V'gabe cholav, and by milk, afagav de meikara chaser kortov have, even though originally it was missing a kortov, but mashlam lu cholav, but then the cholav would complete it again, it would look like you have it, and so therefore it would disqualify in that situation. The point over here again is that Rav follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. But the Gemara continues, V'hami boy lo Rav Papa. But this issue over here, in terms of how to understand the Mishnah, is actually a question to Rav Papa. Rav Papa actually wasn't sure whether Rav follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. To boy Rav Papa, because Rav Papa asked the following question with regards to the opinion of Rav and how Rav aligns with this Mishnah. And the question is as follows. Rav Tani chaser kortov bereisha. Does Rav say that in the first case of the Mishnah, it does say the words chaser kortov? That's the way that we had the Mishnah. That's again in a situation where a little wine drops in, and if you have chaser kortov, of it means you don't have a full 3 lug of water, and to complete that you have wine. So does Rav learn the Mishnah that way, the way we just learned it? Aval shlosha lugin l'tanakama, but let's say it would be 3 lug of water according to the Tanakama, possibly then it would be disqualified, even though it looks like wine. V'yasar Rabbi Yochanan l'meimar, and then Rabbi Yochanan is coming to say, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is coming to say, hakol holech achar amar. It's not true. If it looks like wine, it doesn't disqualify, even if it starts out with a full 3 lug. V'Rav omer Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and according to that, Rav would follow. The Bach says the Girsa should be V'Rav de Omar Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Rav would follow Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. That's what we just said above. That was one side of Rav Papa's question, but there's another possibility. Odilmar, maybe Rav Lotani Chaser Korta Bereisha. Maybe in that first case of the Mishnah, where the wine falls into the water, there is no Chaser Korta in that part of the Mishnah. And what it really means is you have a full 3 lug of water, and a little bit of wine falls in, and lo paslu. The Tanakama is saying it is not disqualified, exactly like Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. For Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, keep Polig Aseifa with the Polig. Maybe Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, his whole argument is really on the end of the Mishnah. The end of the Mishnah said that in a situation where you have Chaser Kortav and a little bit of milk falls in, it doesn't disqualify. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, no, Hakol holech achar amar. It looks like 3 lug of water, so it does disqualify. And if you learned it that way, the Rav Damar Kedivr Hakol, then Rav would really be following everybody, because Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is only arguing on the Seifa. Everybody agrees in the Reisha. There's no Chaser Kortav in the Reisha, and we're saying it's lo paslu, it's not disqualified. And so how can we say that Rav follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri? Rav Papa wasn't really sure who Rav follows. And the Gemara says, Rav Papa mi boile. That's true. According to Rav Papa, it was a question who Rav follows and how to learn the Mishnah. L'Rava pshitale. But according to Rav, it was obvious again that Rav follows Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Lo shmiya li hashmaita. I did not hear this teaching. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Amar le Abai. Abai said to him, he said to Rav Yosef, At amrit lo nehilan. You actually said this to us. V'achi amrit nehilan. And this is what you said. The Rav lo tani chaser korta bereisha. The Rav does not have the words chaser kortav in the beginning of the Mishnah in Mikvos. For Rabbi Yochanan aseifa polig. And according to that, Rabbi Yochanan is only arguing on the seifa part, on the end part of the Mishnah, in the case of the milk. V'Rav do amar kedivrei hakol. And Rav would follow everyone. That's what Abai tells Rav Yosef, that Rav Yosef himself taught. And Rashi explains, Amar Rav Yosef lo shmiya li hashmaita talmido shel Rav Yehuda ani. The point over here is, Rav Yosef was a student of Rav Yehuda. He's saying, I'm a student of Rav Yehuda. V'lo shamati mipiv shmuz, when I did not hear this teaching from him. The Amar leil b'shmei gimel lugan mayim shenafal sochen, because that was the quote we had before. That was from Rav Yehuda. And Amar le Abaye, Abaye said to him, and the point over here says Rashi is Rav Yosef chola. Rav Yosef got sick. V'shachach talmudo, and then he forgot his learning. V'haya Abaye mazkiru mashakibel heimenu. And Abaye was reminding him what traditions he received from him. And finally, Rashi says, Viat Amrit Nehilan, again, you said to us, Kishashanis Mishnah Zu, meaning when you taught this Mishnah, Amrit Lano Allah, you sat on it, Hahi Meimra de Rav Yehuda Amarav, that statement of Rav Yehuda Amarav. Again, that's Rav's statement that the mikveh is not possible in a situation where it's not Chaser Kortav and a little wine falls in. We follow the way it looks and we say it's not disqualified. Upeirashta Lano de Rav Lo Havatani, Chaser Kortav Beresh. And you explained to us that Rav did not have the words Chaser Kortav in the beginning of the Mishnah of mikvos, and so therefore, again, it's not disqualified, even in a situation where it was a full 3 lug of water that looks like wine. V'yamar lemilse l'derei hakol. And that's how Rav says that he follows everyone. And the Gemara continues, V'yamar Rav Yehuda Marav, and Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Chavis malei mayim shanafla liyam hagadol. If you have a barrel full of water and it falls into the yam hagadol, it falls into the Great Sea. Hatovel sham lo also lo tvila. Anybody who immerses in that is not going to be a good tvila. It's not going to be a good immersion. Why? Because chayshinan l'shlosha lugan shelo yehu b'malkam echad. We're concerned that you might have 3 lug of this drawn water that was in the barrel. It's all going to be in one place. And the Gemara continues, V'dafka liyam hagadol. Now this is only true if it falls in the Yam Hagadol, the Koi v'kaima, because the waters of the Yam Hagadol are very still. Aval nahara bi'alma, but a regular river, lo, then no, we would not say that. And the Gemara continues, Tanya namihachi, we have a brisa like this teaching as well. Chavis malei yayin, if you have a barrel full of wine, in this case it's not full of water, but full of wine, shenofla liyam hagadol, it falls into the Yam Hagadol, hatovel sham, somebody who immerses there, lo also lo tvila, the immersion is not good. Chayshinan l'shlosha lugan she'uvin, shelo yehu b'malkam echad, we're concerned of 3 drawn amounts that should not be in one place. We'll see Rashi in a moment. V'chein kikar shel truma, and similarly, let's say a kikar, a loaf of bread of truma, shenaf al sham, that falls there, tamei, it's going to be tamei. And the Gemara says, my v'chein, what is the v'chein? Why are we adding on a case of this kikar shel truma? The Gemara explains, what might you have said? Hasam uke gavra achazake. Over there, we say the person remains with his presumptive status, meaning when the person goes in to immerse, he originally is tamei, so maybe it doesn't work, and we say he continues to be tameh. But hacha uki truma chazaka, maybe here by truma we should say also that way, but it would be a leniency. The truma originally was not tameh, let's keep it not tameh. Maybe we would say that, kamash malon, that's what it's teaching, that it does in fact become tameh. And Rashi explains, Hatovel Sham, again, somebody immerses Ba'oso Makam in that place where the barrel fell. Lo also lo tvila, that's not a good immersion. Shama kol mayim shahayu b'chavis omdim yachad, because we're afraid all of the water that was in the barrel is actually in the same place. It hasn't dispersed. V'shema baz rosha v'ruba b'mayim shuvin, and then this person, really his head and the majority of his body was really in mayim shuvin, in this drawn water. V'zeh echad min haposlan es truma. This is one of the things that can disqualify someone from truma. Again, going into this mayim shuvin. Yefshar l'shloshas lugin lo it's certainly possible. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It means we're concerned for this possibility. Maybe it's all in one place. We're going to see at the end that it's clear that this is a maybe. Because we're going to say later the whole reason why we're strict is because we keep the person on his presumptive status. And Rashi continues, Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa like this as well, the Chayshinan biyam hagadol mashkin hanoflin bo shem omdim emakoma, meaning in general that we're concerned in the yam hagadol that any liquids that fall there, they stay in the same place, they don't disperse. Chavis shal yayin garsinim brisa, again in the brisa the text is that it's a barrel of wine, not a barrel of water. V'hachi garsinim betosefta, that's what it says in the Tosefta. V'chein kikor shel truma shenaf al sham, and similarly if you have a kikor of truma that falls there, achar shetoval zev yola. The case over here is this person who was tameh, he immersed in that wine, and then he came out. So now that wine became tameh. So tameh, we say the kikar is tameh. Shema hayayin omid b'mekomo. Maybe the wine stayed in the same place. V'nitzma machmas adam, and it became tameh from the person. V'chazer v'tim yasa kikar, and then it goes ahead and it is metame. It makes the kikar impure. Mai v'chein. Then the Gemara said, well, why do you have to say it similarly? Pshita, it's obvious. Kevan dechayash l'shem hayayin omid b'mekomo. If we're concerned that maybe the wine is in the same place, ikol amecha shenitzma hakikar. So we certainly do have a concern that the loaf has become tameh. That seems obvious. And the Gemara says, no, what might you have said? Even though when it comes to immersion we're concerned, maybe we're not concerned by the kikar, because the whole thing here is a doubt. We're concerned if the wine is in the same place or not. Maybe only by the person we say, that the immersion is not effective, because we say the person, he remains in his presumptive status. He was tameh, and he was tameh. Now you're coming with this immersion, which is a doubt. You're trying to make him pure. Don't say he's pure because of a doubt. And here also, we'll say the truma stays with its presumptive status. It was originally pure. You might say that, that's what it's teaching us, that we say that the kikar is considered tameh as well. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Let's say they testify about a certain person that he's chayiv to pay his friend 200 zuz. V'nimtzu zomin, it turns out they're edim zomin, so again they have to have the punishment of kasher zomam. And so the Tanakam of the Mishnah says lokin u'mishalman, they actually get malchus and they pay. Shalo hashem hamavi only de makos mavi only de tashlumin, because it's not the same shame, meaning it's not the same violation that brings them to makos, they get lashes, that brings them to payment. There are two separate ideas that are mentioned. There's one idea of malchus and one idea of payment, and both are going to apply. Different Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim but the Chachamim say no, kol ha'mishalim eino look. Anybody who pays doesn't also get malchus, they just have to pay. And the Mishnah continues, Malchus. Let's say they testify about a certain person that he's chayiv to get lashes. Malchus arboim, that he's chayiv to get 40 lashes. V'nimtzu zomin, and it turns out that they're edim zomin. So again, the Tanakama says, Lokin shmonim, they're going to get 80 Malchus. Misham losana b're'achoy chaka. Number one, losana, they violated because they testified falsely. Umisham vasisam lo kasher zamam, and we also have to do to him what he tried to do, the regular punishment of kasher zamam, of edim zomin. So that's another 40 Malchus, that's 80 Malchus. Divrei Rabbi Meir, these are the words of Rabbi Meir. V'chachamim omer, but the chachamim say, Ein lokin elo arboim, they're only going to get 40 Malchus, they're not going to get 80 Malchus. And Rashi explains, Shalo Hashem, HaMechayvo Malchus, Mechayvo Tashlum, and the Pasuk, which is Mechay Malchus, is not the same one that is Mechayev Tashlum, and Malchus Mishum Losana. Again, Malchus is because of the violation of Losana that they testified falsely. But Tashlum and Mishum Kasher Zaman, the payments because of Kasher Zaman. Hashem HaMikr, again, the word Shem in the Mishnah refers to the Pasuk. Kol HaMeshalim Eino Lok, anyone who pays does not get Malchus. T'chsiv Kedei Rishaso. That's learned out from the Pasuk where it says Kedei Rishaso, according to his evil. Mishum Risho Achas Atamechayvo V'Atamechayvo Mishum Shtei Rishayos. We learn it as singular because of the one violation you're mechayivim, but not because of two. Over Meseches Ksubas Makshina now, in Meseches Ksubas they ask, V'nema kol haloka eino mashalim. Why don't we say the other way around? We should say anyone who gets malchus doesn't pay. V'yilku kol hazomin, and all of these false witnesses should get malchus. V'lo yishlam, when they shouldn't pay. Why are we saying they pay and they don't get malchus? It should be the reverse. U'mishanin b'feirish rib satorah edim zomin l'tashlum and v'yolaf loss. And the Gemara over there answers that the Torah explicitly says that the edim zomin pay, and it's all learned out over there again in Meseches Ksubas. Ein loken elo arboim, and again they only get 40 malchus. That's again according to the Chachamim, mishum kasher zamam, because we apply the punishment of kasher zamam. Avlo mishum losane lo lucky, but according to the Chachamim, because of losane they do not get malchus. Kedim mefarish b'Gemara, as the Gemara will explain, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Dalid Amud Beis.